Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, our viewers, wherever you are. My name is Victor Mukasa from the Trans and Intersex History Africa website. Today, we have a very special episode. Welcome to a special episode of the TIHA Archival Conversations. It is a series of episodes really looking at the history, reminiscing about the history of the trans and intersex history, movement history across Africa. TIHA stands for the Trans Intersex History Africa. I am a team member on the website, and with me somewhere backstage is Lizzo Teron, who is also a team member, who is going to come up right now and tell you a little bit about the work at the website. Lizzo Teron, is it good morning, good afternoon, good evening?
Good afternoon. Here in Mexico, it's good afternoon, and in Africa and Europe, it is good night or good evening.
Well, good evening, good afternoon to you. Introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners and let them know about our work at TIHA.
So, as Victor mentioned, Victor himself, me, and some few other team members. One of them is also Julius Kagwa, and we have some few more people on the behind the scenes. Quite a big team actually at this moment. And we started a short while ago, maybe a year and a half or two. We started with archiving, collecting, documenting the history of trans and intersex movements. So actually, we should also say the histories because there's plural histories and plural movements. So we started with this huge task to start documenting them publicly because we had the work already for a long time, collected all the information, and bit by bit we release, and we also continue with more research. So just before I will give it back to Victor to welcome our guest of today, I would also like to say thank you. We really are always very appreciative of our one funder that we currently have, and that is the Other Foundation. And we are also very appreciative of Gender Dynamics that is in the second year of partnering with us, supporting us with small other administrative staff and a huge lot of other things as well, like in various ways. So I think that is enough of me for now. I will give back the visuals and everything to Victor, who will take us away.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lizzo. And to all viewers again, we apologize. We're supposed to be here at 4 o'clock. We were here promptly, but due to technical reasons, we could not broadcast at that time. But here we are. We are back. And as promised, in this episode, we have a very special guest, Reverend Jide Macaulay. You might wonder why Reverend Jide Macaulay is a part of these conversations of the trans and intersex movement in Africa. This movement has been work done by so many people. We have allies, and remember, you don't have to be a child to defend children's rights. And Reverend Jide Macaulay is one of those people who enter on the timeline somewhere around 2007 as somebody who has contributed to this movement. Before Reverend speaks to us, I will read a very impressive bio. Mark you, it's very, very brief. There's more that is about Reverend Jide Macaulay that is not in this bio, but briefly, Reverend Jide Macaulay is a prominent figure and an openly gay British Nigerian based in Manchester in the United Kingdom. He is the founder and CEO of House of Rainbow CIC. Many of you know House of Rainbow. He is a Christian minister since 1998 and an Anglican priest. Mark the words, Anglican priest. A gay, a happy gay, homosexual, or whatever you will hear about him. He has an impressive educational background. Jide holds a degree in law, a master's degree in theology, and a postgraduate certificate in pastoral theology. Jide's ministry is deeply rooted in the principles of inclusion and reconciliation, focusing on harmonizing sexuality, spirituality, and human rights. His advocacy work extends to various organizations, including Kaleidoscope Trust in the UK, the Global Interfaith Network, many of you know that one, in Rela, Europe, and so many others. The list is endless that he's contributing to. His dedication and efforts have earned him recognition as he served as a judge at the British LGBT Awards in 2023 and received multiple Oscars awards in 2014, 2017, and 2018. Reverend Jide Macaulay also contributes as expert advisor at UNAIDS, reference group on HIV and human rights. He's a volunteer chaplain at Mildmay HIV Hospital and a volunteer champion at Africa Children's Charity. This further exemplifies his commitment to social causes and activism. And as if that is not enough, there is more that we cannot say right now in the interest of time. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Victor. Honestly, I have to hold myself back as you were doing all this introduction. You know, I remain very humble, and it's just so good. And I'm also glad to be part of the history of the trans and intersex journey in Africa. So yes, I think 2007 is a pivotal time for us as well, and it also reminded me of our connection with gender dynamics in Africa at the time. And of course, I can now see that a lot of progress have been made, you know, solidify the movement throughout the continent. And that is a really good thing to see.
Well, we want to thank you so much. We want to hear more of those stories. I have met Jide Macaulay so many places. He's one of those, you know, this movement doesn't have the very, very old elders. And when you look at Reverend Jide Macaulay, sometimes even me, we kind of, you know, represent a certain generation of our movement. And I met Jide Macaulay so many years ago, and I know that he has contributed tremendously to the African LGBT human rights movement as a whole, but also a very, very significant ally with the trans movement. Reverend Jide Macaulay, I see that you're popularly known as the Happy Holy Homosexual. Sometimes I call you H.H.H. Where does this name come from? Why the Happy Holy Homosexual?
You know, honestly, Victor, I mean, for many people that is watching and listening, you know, it gets to a point where your back is against the wall, you know, especially within my own Christian faith, that you really have to find a way to find yourself, you know, in that messiness. And honestly speaking, I believe that I woke up one day and I called myself the Happy Holy Homosexual. You know, I am a happy human being. I am holy, you know, as much as I know that God loves me, and I am a homosexual. And I think that, you know, I don't want anyone to be mistaken about my identity. So I can go around and tell everyone I'm Jide Macaulay and I am a homosexual, because, you know, people don't, you know, for heterosexual people, you know, it's almost given, you know, they don't have to say it. But for many of us who are same gender loving, you know, sometimes we have to say. And the other thing again is that it's also about claiming back the word homosexual, because homosexuality, you know, is seen as a derogatory word, is seen as an abomination, is seen as a crime. You know, many people around the world, and especially in Africa, you know, get abused, are even killed because they are homosexual. And you don't need the law of the country. People take the law into their hands in many of our societies in Africa. So it for me is an opportunity to break those barriers.
Right. Thank you so much, Reverend Happy Holy Homosexual. And indeed, you know, Happy Holy Homosexual means to us more than just the human being that you see on the screen today. Happy Holy Homosexual, knowing that he's a happy and holy and a homosexual, makes many of us stick to our faiths. The Happy Holy Homosexual has also given us hugs. You know, Jide, the hugs you give don't end on squeezing, but you also lift people up, like literally lift someone up.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
I remember you doing that to me, and I'm like, wow, a reverend is hugging me this way. You know, it means a lot that you are amongst us and one of us. And
yeah, it means a lot to me as well. And I think that, you know, in Africa, we don't often see a representation of what it looks like to be a happy, holy homosexual. We don't have a representation of the LGBTIQ plus community,
right,
you know, on the continent. You know, we need to also ask ourselves the question, you know, where are the intersex priests in Africa? You understand me? Where are the transgender priests in Africa? Where are the lesbian, gay, bisexual priests in Africa?
Wow.
You know, because, you know, the Christian religion is, for me, is an inclusive religion, but we need to, you know, tackle those who hijack it for their own purposes.
Right.
You know, so I mean, this is where I stand, and I think that a lot of people have been able to look up and say, "Wow, I can see a reflection of myself in Jide."
Right,
you know,
right.
African who is also a Christian.
And you are also a very encouraging, happy, holy homosexual. Well, in your in your bio, we see that you founded and are the CEO of House of Rainbow, which I have known for so long as an organization that actually reaches out not only to people in Nigeria but across Africa, probably even beyond. But I know that you've been there for refugees, for all kinds of LGBTIQ Africans. Why did you start this organization? When did you start it? And, you know, what are the reasons behind the founding of this organization?
I mean, the immediate response for me is that it started because of me, my own journey of reconciling faith and sexuality. You know, I was born and raised in a very conservative Christian home. My father is a priest. So, I mean, coming out as gay was one of the things that are very difficult for me to do. But when I came out as gay, I was asking questions. You know, can there ever be a church where gay people can be accepted? You know, for me, House of Rainbow is a safe space for the key population. House of Rainbow is a safe space for sex workers, for people living with HIV, for men who have sex with men, you know, for transgender community, intersex community, you know, people who use drugs and people who find themselves in prison. Seriously speaking, you know, I mean, we are a sanctuary, you know, for all people. But I think that the reality is that House of Rainbow has been going on for 18 years. So next year, we celebrate our 18th anniversary of this organization. And it has gone beyond creating a space for fellowship, a safe space for fellowship, you know, and we're very global. Yes, we are global. In 2016 to 2019, we carried House of Rainbow literally around the world, but most primarily in Africa.
Right.
So at this time, we have a relationship with about 22 countries. You know, House of Rainbow have a relationship with 22 countries. You know, I would have loved to say that we have 22 branches in 22 countries, but we don't have branches, but we have incredible relationship with 22 countries. So that if we're called upon, you know, to have an activity in Lesotho or Botswana or Malawi or Uganda or Kenya, we're able to rise up, you know, to make that connection happen. But then again, House of Rainbow is not just a place for fellowship where we come together, clap our hands and sing songs and pray. We also respond to real life issues, you know, especially for migrants in the UK. You know, we did a lot of work with people seeking asylum. You know, we do a lot of work on a global basis, most especially in Africa, you know, for Black, gay, bisexual, trans, and intersex people living with HIV. You understand? We have a support group with thousands of people that are a member of that support group. You know, so there's so much. We do a lot of education, you know, studies, workshops, you know, panel discussions. You will find House of Rainbow at conferences. I just came back, you know, from London today because yesterday it was the UK Black Pride
Right.
in London, and
Yeah.
House of Rainbow was delivering on the inclusive interfaith chaplaincy. So we have the chaplaincy that we have, launched last year, and this year we had a bigger presence. So LGBT people who are Buddhists or Sikhism, Hindu, Christians, Muslims, and Jewish all came together, under one banner, to reflect on our spiritual well-being. So that to me is an achievement itself. Even as a Christian, people will say that, what have I got to do with Buddhism? It has got everything to do with Buddhism. Christianity does not have the monopoly to God. We need to understand that we do not have, monopoly to the access. Every one of us as individuals have that access. So we are global in itself. We're coming up to 18 years of our anniversary, and it all started because I had many questions about being gay and being a Christian.
Right. Jide, sometimes I want to do a show on just you. At some point, I will do that elsewhere.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
There are stories that you need to tell and we need to tell. I remember a workshop where you brought your father with you in this LGBT workshop. I have met your father, and no surprise that you're that man's son.
Well, I mean, let me comment on that very quickly, because so that people can understand. It was actually a dialogue between the LGBT community and religious leaders,
right?
And it was in Stellenbosch in South Africa, and it was 2009. So it's part of that history that we're making as well.
Yeah.
So I brought him along, and my hope was that he would learn a lot. But unfortunately, my father, being a very typical Nigerian African man, he actually resisted, a lot at the conference, and he was very insulting to the trans community. He was insulting to the community of people living with HIV, and unfortunately, it looks like we can't make him unlearn, many of his abusive ways. And I'm sorry, I mean, it's early stage of this conversation, but my father still remains very homophobic, because in 2014. He signed, he celebrated, the passing of the anti-gay bill in Nigeria. And that was hurtful, in a way, because my father believed that, I should be subjected to shock therapy and, and reparative therapy, and then 14 years imprisonment for me to no longer be gay. I mean, it is painful, but I am here, celebrating everything wonderful about God, not the way that my father sees it, but the way that myself and many other LGBT people see our relationship with God.
Well, he's an elder in African society. He's your father. But the good thing is that we have you to remind us that God loves us. And that is why we still love him, because he brought you forth. But we are proud to have you as ours. So here now, the main point of this conversation, Reverend Jide, is that entry on the Trans and Intersex History website that we have. We have you entering on the timeline around 2007. And I think that something happened around that period that brings you into this conversation. My colleague Lizo Teron tells me you met somewhere and something happened. And whatever you're going to tell just shows us how passionate you are about the human rights of everybody, that you were at different meetings, but really pushing forward the agenda of another group of people that you see and care about, that are going through a lot. Could you please take us through that journey where where you meet Lizo, and indeed you get into this timeline on the archives? Lizo, why do I bite my tongue when you are around? Please come out from backstage and have this interaction with Jide Macaulay about this event.
Okay, that's good. I mean, Lizo, you can set the background.
Yes, I can. Okay, well, let me remove you for the moment. So yes, what happened? Jide and I think we met in Johannesburg. There was an ILGA World Conference in 2007, earlier in the year. That it was actually another important part of the history. It was the actual meeting where the Pi African ILGA was established.
Yes.
In that meeting, that's when we met. So that is a separate other entry piece on our website. On the timeline, people can go and see that as well in 2007. But however, Jide and I met, like with this networkings at conferences, and maybe, we chatted, and I said, yes, I actually happened to be traveling in July of that same year to Lagos in Nigeria. And that would have been also my extremely first visit to any other African country outside of South Africa. And it's then that, Jide, you invited me. I think in that moment you still lived in Nigeria for that time period, right? And you invited me and say, please, let's make a plan how I can go and introduce you and take you around to whatever it is. And from there, the story started. So now I will give the mic to Jide, because then you obviously took me around and we meet some people. So let's hear from you about that.
Absolutely. And Elisa, thank you so much for the memory as well. It was indeed 2007. I was in South Africa at the inauguration of Pan-Africa ILGA, and it was in Johannesburg. I remember it very well. And so, I have been a frequent traveler to South Africa before then. So, and it was such a great opportunity for me to meet other queer people. And also was expecting a few other Nigerians at the conference as well. Mm-hmm. But I think that, when we met, I met different organizations doing different things, including Gender Dynamics, and many other organizations that are focused on the human rights of members of our community. And of course, I was delighted because when you said you were coming to Nigeria, we were exchanging email. Email was popular at the time. We didn't have things like WhatsApp.
Yeah, there was on WhatsApp, Facebook.
Chatting back in the days, it was email. So we managed to get in touch. And when you were in Nigeria, in Lagos to be precise, we met up as well. And I remember because you reminded me that we were driving in a traffic-free Lagos. I
didn't know that existed.
I need to explain this to people that are listening, because the Nigerians that are listening need to know. Now, a member of my congregation who was also a trans person is actually a naval officer, a Navy officer. So they decided to put on the Navy uniform and took over my car, to drive during a period that we call environmental. Because during environmental, everybody stays at home and clean the streets. So the roads are empty. So they had the uniform on, and then we had to come and pick you up at a location in Lagos, to bring you down to House of Rainbow where we were staying, and then for you to meet, members of our congregation. And I think that for me, we had that opportunity that day, to drive traffic free, to be quite honest. But I think that the crux of the connection was, coming to House of Rainbow, there was about maybe 7 to 9, trans people. And I think prior to that, there has been a number of confusion, misunderstanding, and how it's like in the LGBT community, we swap, gender roles, he, she, and things like that. So, and I think that we were getting into this kind of heteronormative model or trouble, as I put it, because even though I personally prefer for people to call me Mama Jide because of my own well-being, for my well-being, to be quite honest, my pronouns are he, him. So for my trans siblings or members of our congregation who identify as trans, there's also some who were just, happy with cross-dressing. And I think that is okay. We have to find a way, to mitigate and ensure that people find their comfort place. So the role that you played, in that was to educate people so that, we understand where the gender dysphoria sits. We understand where the anxiety is actually happening for people. We also understand the pathway, for transition for those who want to transition. And as we know, in Nigeria and many African countries, there is still no, legal means or even clear medical pathway for those seeking to transition. But I think that, the historical part is that you played a part by coming to talk to our people, educate our people, to actually show them, what are the things to look out for, what are the signs, what's their body saying to them. And of course, the beautiful thing, I've said this so many times over the past few weeks, I knew that was coming here, is that the majority of the trans people at House of Rainbow, for some reason, they all go with a name that starts with S. I'm talking Sylvia, Sharon, Stephanie. It's like, come on, can we have other names like Rachel or Jennifer or something like that? Honestly, it's such a beautiful thing to see. And I think that the other contribution I would say for House of Rainbow is that when we gather, for our fellowship, we always have a spare room, where our trans sibling will go into that room on arrival, and then they will change and present themselves the way that they want to. So House of Rainbow was a safe space, for trans people earlier on. I mean, we did things that people did not believe was possible. So, and I think that history is very important for us. 2007 and onwards. So we recognize that House of Rainbow is also a place where we check ourselves over and over again. Who are we missing? If we're missing a trans person or someone that's non-binary, we go looking for them to say, you need to be part of this movement, because we need you.
I think you are so right there, because in those early years, that was also whatever myself, not only me, but our small team at Gender Dynamics in those times, like the moment you hear of somewhere, some space, something, we always try to explore and find out about more trans people, and having those type of networkings as you spoke about. I'm gonna bring back Victor to the stage, because Victor will then also start asking again some more questions of what was the conditions of trans people in those years and now, and blah, blah, blah. But let me not go ahead of myself. I will bring back Victor, and then I will go away again.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I was enjoying that conversation between the two of you. And, I just took a back seat and listened. And Reverend Jide, you talk about those years. And I remember as a trans person, those years, early 2000s, to the mids, most of the organization had the acronym T. In their acronym, they had a T in the names of the organizations, LGBT, this all over Africa, across the continent. And but then there was not there was not support or understanding of the T in the acronym. In fact, for so many of our organizations, which were founded as LGBT organizations, there was nothing happening about the T, as many of us had not even yet come out. How, according to you, was the situation of trans people and the organizations during that period? I know things have changed today, but generally, how did you see the lives of trans people, not only in Nigeria, because you were already a continental activist at that point? You saw all of us. How can you share your experience with the lives?
I mean, Victor, I have to say that, a lot of the things I did were not necessarily conscious. There was a lot that were really unconscious as well, because I have been in a space, where, I understand the elimination or almost the invisibility of trans people.
Yeah.
But the reality is that there is no lesbian, gay, bisexual without transgender people.
Right.
So we need to be respectful of trans people. We cannot talk about the freedom and liberation of lesbian, gay, bisexual without talking about the transgender community bringing that liberation by force. I mean, we need to look at the history of Stonewall. It was not a lesbian or a gay man that was kicking their boots inside the police car during the riot. It was not them that were throwing stones and missiles. It was not them that was resisting arrest. And let us also be mindful that trans people are actually more visible. They're also more vulnerable than the lesbian and gay people. And I'm sorry to say that as a gay man, if anyone is listening and feel offended, then we have to do some work. Seriously. Just a few days ago, we're having this live interview, today on the 12th of August. Just a few days ago, a transgender person was bludgeoned to death
All
in
right.
Nigeria. So I mean, and again, we are reading statistics that are unbelievable. You understand me? They haven't run out yet. We are almost, 400, trans people have been killed, murdered. Why? You understand me? And I think that is because of the visibility of trans people in several communities that have no sense to know that these are other human beings like us, you know? And I think that, for me, with House of Rainbow, it was important that, the trans community were centered and central of the work that we do. Let me also say this, you already mentioned it, that, that I operated on a continental or even on a global level. Yes. I mean, I lived in England, and I'm back in England now. I live in England now. Because when House of Rainbow started, we started House of Rainbow in Lagos, Nigeria. So, but I've also had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with trans people. I've also had to walk my own journey as well, because there was a time that I did think whether or not I was trans, that I was a trans woman.
Mama Jide.
You see, also, and to be honest, I mean, I don't want to confuse people or confuse myself. I'm not trans,
Yeah.
you understand me? But I'm somebody that understands a little bit about my trans siblings' journey. And I'll tell you a little bit. I mean, I managed to connect with the Metropolitan Community Church, and I trained with them for about 3 years before we started House of Rainbow. And I'm still connected with the MCC Church today because we have a lot of collaboration with the MCC Church, the very church that I started my own journey with. But it was within this denomination that I learned a lot more about trans people because, of course, I mean, I offended trans people when I was learning, I used the wrong pronouns, I offended people because I didn't understand, I was ignorant. But I learned from my mistakes. Okay? So arriving in Nigeria, I wasn't surprised that the majority of the people that came to House of Rainbow were trans presenting or very effeminate. There were people who told me that they cannot come to, or they will not come to House of Rainbow because there were just too many effeminate people in our congregation. I told them to stay away. I mean, if you're within the LGBT community and you still think that it is right to discriminate against one of us, you're not deserving, of the freedom that you get as well, because injustice against one is an injustice against all. Discrimination against one is discrimination against all. And here we are, where we are saying that, God loves everybody equally, but you still have the audacity, to look down on a transgender person. And it's not only just the transgender side of our humanity, it's also those who prefer to wear androgynous outfits, in Africa, let me make it using plain word, cross-dressing. Because then again, we have to ask that question: who decided what clothes that men should wear and what women should wear? I'm going to be 60 years old next year. When I walk into a clothes store, I'm more gravitated towards wear the female clothing, and I'll buy things that makes me comfortable. Seriously speaking. So at the end of the day, I want to celebrate me for me. I don't want to be in, somebody else's ideal.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, Reverend, I'm so glad that we are able to you're able to share with us today. Now, as a clergy, as an Anglican priest yourself, do you have any guidance about transgender people, intersex people in the Bible?
Well, I mean, to be quite honest, I mean, I always say to people that I try to I not just avoid the question. I think when it comes to theology and transgender, we often are always looking for the chapter and verse in scriptures. I think that for the LGBT community, we are a lot more than the chapter and verse. The important thing that I'll say to trans people when it comes to the Bible is that, in James, it tells us that, God knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb. You understand me?
Right.
Now, that should be enough. God knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb. And I think that, it is so important that we have that clarity, of knowing that God knew who we are. And I think against people say, well, transgender people are going against God because God created this. Let's go back to Genesis as well. God made them male and female. and that male and female could be centered in one person. You know, it
Yeah.
could be by way of the genitalia, as we know today for our intersex sibling,
Right.
but it can also be by way of our expression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think there's a number of things that I always like to remind people. You know, one is our sex. Okay, this is the biological sex.
Mm-hmm.
What were we born with? Because I mean, a lot of people are born with, you know, genitalia. So I mean, for those who have male genitalia or female genitalia, it's defined at birth. And but society say, okay, this is a boy.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I mean, to God is because the boy has a male genitalia does not determine that that is a boy. Okay, because you have a female genitalia does not determine that this is a girl.
Right.
Society is who decided that.
Yes.
Okay.
Aimed.
So because it is important that people understand it, those that are listening. So let me explain it. So sex. Now, the second one is sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is about your attraction. So you might have this genitalia at birth, but you're still sexually attracted to someone of the same gender. You understand me? So it's like I'm attracted, you know. But I always like to do this, you know, because sometimes society always pigeon us in the area of sex. Our sexual orientation is not necessarily about sex. That is why we also have people that are pansexual, are asexual. You understand me? So we have people who do not have any desire for sex. You understand me? And that is also part of their sexual orientation.
Right.
So we've got people same gender loving, we've got the heterosexual, opposite gender loving, we've got bisexuals, you know, we've got pansexuals, we've got asexuals. You understand? That's part of our sexual orientation. It's about who we are attracted to emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, intellectually, you know, and then maybe sexually at the very end. But sexually is very important as well. I don't want to take it out, you know, for who it is very important to. Now, the other thing again is this, Victor, gender identity. You know, gender identity is who you say you are.
Yes.
Not what society or any culture determine for you.
Right.
So when we talk about gender identity for every person, that's why you see a lot of young people that say, I'm a princess, you know, seriously. Or, I mean, you see someone who's born female that are presenting masculine. That is
themselves Tyson.
Exactly, you know. And again, we've seen in the Olympics recently, we've seen Imani Khalif, you know, who present quite masculine, and it's a female. So, you know, that's the identity. That's how they identify.
Yes.
But I think that, you know, the final point for me in this point that I'm making is also the expression. Okay. You know, the expression is exterior.
Yes.
Okay. You know, for people like myself, you know, Mama Jide, we're quite effeminate and quite calm. You know, that's my exterior, but I am still a man.
Yes.
You understand me? And it's okay to have effeminate men and masculine women. It's okay. But then again, what is not okay is when we subject these people to abuse because of their, you know, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression.
Yes.
But we must also remember that because someone presents, you know, as male and effeminate does not actually make them, you know, gay. We have to be very clear about that. Right. And that's the problem we have with society. You make all these laws to punish the LGBT people. You're punishing society generally. And let me come back to the question that you asked, because I wanted to explain that.
Yeah,
as a clergy,
helpful.
Yeah, thank you. As a clergy, you know, I was raised in a Christian household to start with. So my theological journey started as a young person. But, you know, I was determined to find answers. You know, my first theological training was at my father's university. You know, it was very conservative, it was very draining. You know, it's just like somebody is draining air and blood out of my body. They were teaching me conservatism the way that is dangerous, you know. But I mean, it took me about 5 years after my training before I discovered the community of the Metropolitan Community Church, where I started to unlearn many things that are, you know, done. Because, you know, I grew up in an environment that is very conservative. You know, when it comes to anything to do with sexuality, you know, you're going to hell, your damnation. I mean, they don't just blame you individually, you know, they blame you for every other person's problem.
Right.
So if a member of your family is unemployed or they enter into sickness, they blame it on you because you are the LGBT person.
You have brought a curse on the family.
Yeah, you get a curse on, and that's not true.
Mm.
So I think that, as a clergy, as a minister, I began to ask questions. So when I joined the community of the Metropolitan Community Church, I learned a lot. I went to the Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, California.
Mm-hmm.
I learned liberation theology, queer theology. I learned the theology of freedom. And that was why when I finished my training, oh God, I said to the people, I want to go back to Nigeria to help to start a ministry of liberation, a ministry that really cares for people, a ministry that is a space of sanctuary for many people. And I haven't forgotten when I told my mother, she was in tears. She said, oh my God, they are going to kill you. They are going to destroy you. But I knew that God is on my side, whom shall I fear?
God is on my side.
So, I mean, becoming an Anglican is a whole different story altogether. But I think the short part of it is that I strongly believe that my priesthood is a priesthood to all believers, and I think for me, when I started my journey in ministry quite publicly, they called me the gay pastor. I'm not a gay pastor. I'm a pastor who is gay. You understand? There's no such thing as a gay pastor. You don't turn on and say gay doctor or gay pilot, or gay carpenter. But we often will stigmatize a pastor who's gay. But if anything at all, maybe in the spirit of taking the word back, I might say I'm a gay pastor. But I think the reality is that I'm a pastor who is gay, who is same-gender loving. Because some of the things with me and my journey towards ministry, even in Anglican ministry, is that I want to see a reflection of myself that I never saw before. When I was growing up as a young person, I never, ever, up to today, met, an older Black African, openly gay priest or pastor. About a year or so ago, if not 2 years, I put a post on my social media. Is that are there any openly Black, any openly Nigerian gay pastor? For goodness sake, it can't not be Jide Macaulay alone. Well, seriously, because I mean, the good news for me is that there are openly gay pastors in Kenya.
He's the one who is open.
Yes, exactly.
He's the one who is open. I think that that's part of the calling, because that actually gets those who need nourishing in our community to feel easy and safe to reach out to you. And in fact, as we conclude this program, Reverend, I would like to thank you. I thank you personally and on behalf of gay and lesbian and transgender and intersex and other people in Africa, because you've been here for some time, but I know that you have encouraged and lifted up so many people who have felt low at so many points in their lives. Reverend Jide, that's the reality. And even from me as a person, you write one small post on your page. God is not mad at you. It means a lot. And I have read it before on your page. God is not mad at you because you're gay. God is not, like, I've read so many things from your page that actually the fact that they encourage me, I am sure there's an LGBTIQ person somewhere being encouraged. You don't work in vain. You don't speak in vain. You have not suffered in vain on your journey as an Anglican priest from Africa. And I thank you so much. And for that matter, I would like you to tell people how to find you, how to find House of Rainbow, how to reach out to you in case they feel that they need to speak to somebody who will understand.
Well, I'm very, very accessible, and I always encourage people, if you contact me, please drop a text message. It's easier than making a call, because I could be very busy. I could be on a train. I could be sleeping. Self-care is not selfishness, so to say. I think the one thing I want to say is that, everyone is loved by God. And I think that the catchphrases that you've seen is because I'm always, prompted to post a message out there to continue to affirm people. And as you can see, the banner behind me, it's got a lot of acronyms there. GAY means God accept you, God adores you, God accommodates you, God anoints you. and so on and so forth. So those are my mantra. I wake up every day.
I've seen those on your page.
These ones as well. But you can find me. It's Jide Macauley on all social media platforms, and it's also House of Rainbow on all social media platforms. Drop us a DM. We will get back to you. You understand me? And of course, if you have questions, we're quite happy to take that on. The other thing again is that we are, creating more activities on our social media very soon. In London, if you are in London and you're watching this, we are celebrating our 18th year anniversary on the 15th of September, 4 p.m. The location is Bethnal Green in London. If you're in London, come along and celebrate with us. We would love to welcome you. So, well, there we are. So you can find me on social media.
Thank you, our happy, holy homosexual, Reverend Jide Macauley. Thank you so much for making this time to speak to us and our viewers and those who will come, after this moment to watch what was happening here. Thank you for giving us the time out of your potentially eventful night just to come here for an hour to engage with us. We apologize for the earlier problems, technology-wise, but we are grateful that you're here. And thank you again for your contribution to the African LGBTIQ movement, but not making that big for today. You have contributed a lot to some of our trans lives and to our movement as a continent. We thank you so much, Reverend Jide Macauley. Thank you from TIHA.
Thank you.
Yes. And have a good night, Reverend. Yes, Mama Trans, please take care of Reverend Jide Macauley. It's time for him to go to bed. You can come and join us as we close the program.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much for all that kind words, Reverend Jide Macauley. We really, really appreciate all the reflections and just a lively discussion. It's very late at your time where you are in London. So, well, also in most of Africa where people are viewing from. So also together with Victor, I want to say thank you. Apologies for all of the technical issues. But most important, thank you very much, Reverend Jide Macauley.
All right. And to our viewers out there, this is just one of so many episodes that we are going to be showing here from the Trans and Intersex History Africa website. We will be announcing our next guests and the conversations that we'll be having thereafter. Thank you for tuning in today, and thank you for understanding when we got that earlier technical problem. And thank you to Lizzo for being a super teammate. From all of us at TIHA, good night, good morning, and good afternoon to everybody watching us today. Au revoir.
Good night.